Well, greetings from Milo Academy. As you heard, my wife and I have been there for 30 years. Have enjoyed it immensely. It's a beautiful, beautiful school. If I could get the picture up there, I wanted to make sure I brought a picture of the school in case somebody hasn't seen Milo Academy. We have almost 400 acres there. And I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I've heard that Milo is the most remote school in North America that is a conference school. And I'm not sure if that's true, but it's pretty remote. We have quite a diverse group of students. When I walked in in the back this morning, Rod Bardell asked me, he says, "Jeff, do you guys still have Ukraine students there?" And I said, "Oh yes, we have Ukraine students there." I think we have about 7 Ukraine students, something like that. But we have students from all over the world. My wife just made me a list real quick. She said we have them from Colombia, Congo, Dominican Republic, Bermuda, Ethiopia, Israel, Mexico, Myanmar, Russia, and Ukraine. It's kind of interesting. When we first got that Russian student, there was some concern. What's that going to be like bringing that in with our group of Ukrainian students? And it's really cool. They're best friends. It's pretty cool. One of the things we have at Milo that is tradition that I love so much, every Sabbath for the scripture reading, we actually have 5 different people come up and read it, and they all read it in their own separate language, and we end up with English. I really like that. It reminds me that that's a little bit of what heaven's going to be like someday, with lots of different cultures and people being there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey that I've been through. There's going to be parts that I still struggle with a lot, but that's okay. The Lord is, when the Lord asks you to do something, He helps you through. So anyways, like I said, like you heard, I started off in the maintenance department. I graduated from Walla Walla College then. It was university, obviously, now. But graduated and went back to work at Milo Academy. I was green as green could be. Didn't know very much about a lot of different things, especially working with high school students. It didn't take long in the maintenance department that I figured out I better start learning how to motivate students to work. And that's where I learned to help them learn the pride of a job well done. I also learned real quick, I could tell them, yeah, you go do this, and they would do it. But they had such a better attitude if I gave them choices. So I might have a car that needed to be washed outside, and it was cold and rainy out there, and they didn't want to do it, and I knew they wouldn't want to do it. So I gave them options. I'd say, I got the sewer lagoon down there. I need to have some stuff cleaned up down there. You guys could go work on that, or I've got this pickup out here that needs to be washed outside. And what do you know? They would pick the pickup that I needed washed. And they had a great attitude about the whole thing because they're the ones that picked it. It was great. God takes us on this journey. Started me off in the maintenance department. And after about 4 years, there was a job opening in the boys' dorm, assistant boys dean. And the school asked me, they said, "Hey, Jeff, would you be interested in that?" And I said, "Sure, I would." I tell people it's my favorite job I've ever had at Milo Academy. You got so connected with students in that position. It was really, really, really special. Today, I have a very fond part of my heart is in the boys' dorm. But one of the things I got challenged in that is you would spend time with the young people, and you'd pour love into them, and you would spend time and help them become better people, and then they might make a choice that was a bad choice, and they would have to be asked to leave, and that hurt a lot. And so in that process, I developed a philosophy, And I still use it. I'm still in charge of, I'm in charge of the discipline committee still. And I have a plaque that I bring out for every one of our discipline committees. And it says on it, "We may hate what you do, but we will always love you as a person." So I developed this philosophy. I separate the person from the action. And then I can see him in the hallway. I can see him at camp meeting. I can see him anywhere and love that person. I may hate what they choose to do. And I really believe this is how God actually treats us too and feels about us. Amen. Always loves us, no matter what we do. I was in the dorm for 4 years, and then I started teaching. They came to me and said, "Hey, we've got an opening in our technology department. Would you like to be interested in going in and teaching?" I started doing that a little over 20 years ago, and I'm still doing it. It's kind of interesting. I tell people all the time, I'm not a teacher. I dislike being up in front of people. And so you can probably guess how I feel about this being up here. But I get them out as soon as I can out of the classroom. We do go over the safety, and we go over the things in the classroom that I don't enjoy going over with them. And I get them out in the lab, and we have so much fun out in the shop. I think it's amazing. God takes our weak areas and he uses them and makes something beautiful out of them. Don't know how that works, but he is faithful on that. Probably about 10 years ago, the school asked me, they said, "Hey, we've got some administrative help we need. Would you be interested in starting to help in the administration part?" And I said, "Sure." So like I said, about 10 years ago, I started in the administration part, and they call me a vice principal now. I oversee about 8 different departments now. And the things that I have learned growing up through starting at maintenance, starting in the boys' dorm, all of these different things going up through there, I can see how God has placed me in different positions to teach me different things that I would have skipped. But it was really, really helpful. So that's up to my life now. But about 3 years ago, just a little bit over 3 years ago, I had an accident that happened at Milo Academy that changed my life tremendously. It happened October 11. It was about 7 p.m. at night. I was getting ready to go home. We had a long day. And I was getting ready to go home, and as I was walking by the boiler room, I remembered, "Jeff, you haven't cleaned the ash out of the boiler." I call it a boiler, but it's actually a hot water heater. But anyways, we call it the boiler. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to go down and clean that pit out. And it's just like your fireplace at home. You know, you burn wood, it's burning sawdust, but it burns wood, and it builds up over time, and you have to go down there and scrape it out. And so I was like, yeah, I got to get that done. And so as I walked over there, I noticed that the maintenance man, Toby, was working late that night. It's, like I said, it's about 7 o'clock, and that kind of surprised me, but I was like, hey, that's neat. So I went over to the boiler room, and I should tell you a little bit about it, where you clean it out. It's in what we call the pit. It's a concrete vault. It's about 10 feet wide, about 12 feet long, and it's about 10 feet down to the bottom of it where you take the ash out. And so I went over there. There's a ladder attached to the side wall, and so I climbed down the ladder, and started getting ready to clean that ash out. So open the door up, and you can see in there where the fire was. And I have a long rake that you reach in there and you pull everything out. What I didn't realize is there was sawdust underneath the top that was unburned sawdust. It was super hot, super heated. The only thing that kept it from burning was oxygen. It was covered up, so it couldn't get any oxygen. Well, so what I did is I reached in there and pulled the top off, and immediately all that oxygen rushed in. And there was an incredible explosion of all that sawdust in there, and it just blew it all out through the fire, out into the room where I was. I'm going to stop for just a second and tell you a backstory. When I was a kid, my dad was in a fire one time. He was running a bulldozer around a fire line. And the fire jumped his fire line that he was building and surrounded him. So he was completely surrounded with fire. And he decided that his best chance was to drive out through it. And so he did. He drove out through it. And as he went through it, he guarded his face like this and went through it and held his breath as he went through. He got burned pretty bad, but he survived. And they told him, they said the only reason he survived was he held his breath through that fire. So he always told me, he says, Jeff, if you're ever in a fire, hold your breath. It's not the natural instinct. When you get a fire around you, you want to take your breath. So it's not the natural thing to do. But when that explosion happened in there, it's just like I could hear my dad beside me saying, don't breathe. So I didn't. I held my breath, closed my eyes, and I thought, I got to get out of here. So I made my way over to the wall, fell around, found the ladder, and I started climbing up the ladder. And I was about halfway up it, I remember, and I squinted my eyes open just enough to see around me. My lungs were hurting. I wanted to take a breath. And everywhere I looked, I could see fire. And I was like, I'm not out of trouble. In fact, at that moment, I remember thinking, this may be the end. I don't know that I'm going to make it out of this. I kept on climbing, got to the top of the ladder, and fell out on the boiler room floor. And I opened my eyes again at that point, and I could see on all the walls all the way around me, I could see a reflection of fire. And that's when I knew I'm still on fire. My clothes are still on fire. So I did what they always tell you to do, drop and roll. And so I rolled on the boiler room floor and I got the fire put out. So I decided I better get help. So I went, I remembered Toby was out there and maintenance. And so I went out the building and went over to maintenance. I hollered at him. I said, Toby, I need help. And he came out, took one look at me. And I'll never forget, there was a 55-gallon barrel that he had stuck there months before underneath the drain spout. And it had filled up with water. The top had been cut out. And so he went over there. And at the time, watching it over the months, I was like, why would you have that there? That's kind of an interesting thing. I was so thankful for it. He went over, grabbed a 5-gallon bucket, and just doused me with a couple of buckets of water. And then called 911. I sat down there on the pavement and just kind of thinking about life. And that's when I looked at this arm. And the skin on my arm was just coming off. All the skin was just coming off in a sheet. And that's when I realized I'm in trouble. It's not going to be take some ibuprofen and go home. It's going to be something pretty major. He called 911. First responders got there right away. Ambulance got there right away. They took a look at me and they said, we got to airlift you out of here. And so they started calling that. One thing that was kind of interesting is every single person that came along, the first responders, the ambulance, the helicopters, the hospitals, the first thing they would always say is, open your mouth. We want to see inside your mouth. And I would ask them why. And they said, we need to see if there's soot in there. And I said, I didn't breathe. And every one of them, they said, you are so fortunate. You are so fortunate. So they eventually got a helicopter in, stuck me in the helicopter, and flew me down to Medford. And as I got there, they took me in and laid me out on the table, and they started looking at my burns. And the doctor got up to, I think it was 55%. And he says, this guy's 55% burned on his body. We got to get him up to Portland. And so they decided that they had to send me to the burn center, Emmanuel Burn Center up in Portland. They looked for an airplane to try to get me on, and they couldn't find one. And so they stuck me back on the helicopter again and took me up there to Portland. At this point, it's a little bit fuzzy. I don't remember a lot of the different things about there. I remember getting there. I remember they started pumping drugs into me or things to try to stop the pain. And that caused some terrible nightmares, some terrible dreams, some of that kind of thing. There was a lot of things I discovered real quick that were not pleasant. that would happen there. They have what they call, well, first of all, they bandaged me all up. I looked like a mummy. I remember from those dreams waking up and thinking, I got to get out of this place. I got to get out. And trying to escape out of their bed when you look like a mummy, it doesn't work very well. They would come in and they would, I don't know, there's some monitor somewhere, because every time I started trying, they would walk in the door and catch me, and they would say, what are you doing? And I'd say, I'm trying to get out of here. And they say, where are you at? I think they were trained, because every single nurse would say the exact same thing. Where are you at? And I'd stop and I would think, and I'd say, I'm at the burn center. And they said, you're right. And why are you at the burn center? And I would stop and I'd think, I said, because I was in a fire. And they said, you're right. And for some reason that would reset my brain. I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. I know it's okay to be here. And that would give me a little bit of, or them probably a little bit of relief from me trying to escape from them until I got another one of my crazy dreams. But I developed something an appreciation for the nurses and the medical staff. I could hear them putting the things they would have to do with in the other rooms around me, and the yelling of the patients or the cursing or something. And I made up in my mind, I was like, I can't do much in a bed here, but at least I can make their life as the best I possibly can. And they would come in about every 2 days with a group of nurses, about 4 to 6 nurses, and they would cut all my bandages off and go in and scrub all your wounds. They called it wound care. It was one of those things you didn't really look forward to. They would give you extra meds and that kind of stuff for that. But I always was trying to make their life the best I possibly could for them. And they would apologize all the time. We are so sorry we have to do this. And I had the same response. It's okay. I know it could be worse. I didn't know how it could be worse, but I was sure it could be worse somehow. And we got a real connection with the nurses. It was good. They ended up doing 3 skin grafts on me. I don't know where they started doing skin grafts, but they started doing skin grafts. And it's really kind of interesting. They've got some brand new procedures. When I say brand new, it's several years old now, but to them it was new. There's a skin graft where they skin you and they put the skin right on you. So they take it and put it somewhere. And that's what the back of my hand is like. But they also have a new procedure that is really incredible. Medical is amazing. They take a section of skin, and it can be 1 square inch, and they run it through a machine that makes it kind of like expanded metal. And so then they can stretch that to be 4 square inches instead of just 1 square inch, so they don't have to harvest near so much. And then they take some of your cells and they grind it up. So they put that patch on you, and then they actually spray your cells back on you. Incredible. If you looked on my arm, you can see there's kind of a pattern to those types of things. It's amazing the things that they can do now. So like I said, they did 3 different skin grafts on me. And the third one, they took me away in the morning and did the graft, did the skin graft on me and brought me back. And for some reason, I didn't wake up on them again, clear until the evening. In fact, at 11:50, I went back and looked at my charts to see the exact timings of it. I went into cardiac arrest. My heart stopped. The breathing, I stopped breathing on them. And of course, I was hooked up to monitors, and it started calling them. And they came down and immediately started doing CPR and calling the crash cart. And it eventually got there. And they worked on me for 10 minutes. And at the end of that 10 minutes, they somehow got my heart going again. And it brought me back around. It's a miracle. I've had doctors say that in that situation, I had about a 2% chance of coming back. So again, I'm just thankful to the Lord. He blessed so much. The devil wasn't done with me in a few days. They had me up for a occupational therapy And so they're standing up, and for some reason, I got a blood clot that went through and went to my lungs and dropped me. They didn't know what was going on. They rushed me off to imaging and somehow got me back. I don't understand that process either. But again, they said, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. I had nurses come in regularly after that said, we were there. One nurse came in, went right after my cardiac arrest. She says, I was the one that did CPR on you. She was very proud. She says, I didn't break any of your ribs. It sure felt like they were broken, but she said they weren't, which is really special. I had a lot of nurses that said, that next day after that cardiac arrest, there was almost a steady flow of people coming in and checking on me, saying, are you okay? I think they were checking to see if I could remember or something. I don't know if I had brain damage. But, and I would say yes. And there were so many of them said, we came out, we were waiting in the hallway to see how you do. They didn't say they prayed for me. They used other words for me, that they were there to support me. Again, I appreciate it. So after that, after the pulmonary embolism where I had the blood clot, things settled down a little bit for me. And at the end of I was actually in there for 1 month. I was in the burn center for 1 month. At the end of the burn center, they said, hey, we would like to do one more surgery, but things aren't you didn't do well the last surgery. We think we're done with you. And we want to send you on to a rehab center. And I really felt like I needed to get back to Milo. And so I told them, I said, no. I said, I think I need to get back to my community. They didn't understand that, so I explained that to them. And they said, well, we really think you ought to go to therapy, this rehab center, for a couple of weeks. And we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and they said, okay, we'll tell you what, we're going to give you a test. I should have known right there to watch out. But they came in, occupational therapy came in, and they said, okay, we're going to take you on a test. And remember, I've been in the bed for a month. And so they got me up, and they handed me a glass of water. And it was, just about this full from the top. They had it almost to the very top. And they handed me this cup of water, and they said, we want you to carry this with you while we go on this test. And I'm in trouble because I'm not very smooth after laying in bed for so long. And so I took that, and I remember saying, Lord, I need help. I'm in trouble on this. We went out the hall, and the Emmanuel Hospital is a pretty good sized hospital, and they took me down corridors. They took me to the fire exit, made me go down the fire exit, down the stairs, several floors. Then they would take me, and there's this long corridor underneath the hospital somewhere, and we came back out in another part of the hospital quite a ways away, going through the whole thing. And at the end, they said, okay, we want to give you one more test. And so they turned me to the wall. It was a very busy hallway, so people were going back and forth all the time. And they turned me towards the hallway, and they said, okay, we want you to cross your arms, stand on one leg, and close your eyes, and you're going to stay like that for 1 minute. And I thought, there's no way I can do that. I don't even think I could do that, with all this, because my brain is concentrating on the people going by. Try it sometime. I've tried it, and it's difficult now. And I, again, prayed to the Lord. I said, Lord, I need help. I cannot do this. And so I tried. It started, and what do you know, after a minute, they said, okay, go to the other leg now. And so I went to the other leg, and I was like, I'm still in trouble on this, but Lord, help me through that. It was really helpful. We got done with that little test, and they said, okay, we want you to find your way back to your own room by yourself now. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, nope, we are not kidding you. You have got to find your way back to your room. And again, first thing you pray, it's like, Lord, I can't not do this. I need help to get through this. And you know what? I have no idea how I got back to my room, but I got back to my room somehow, some way. I got back, I handed him back his cup, and he says, I will recommend that you can leave without the extra rehab. So I was blessed, so blessed, very blessed. So now they would like to go back and do they would like to do another surgery. If you looked at my hands when I closed my hand like this, the web of my fingers comes almost down to my knuckles. They would like to go back in and cut that back up. I tell people I swim better this way. I don't relish the thought of doing another surgery, so I'll probably just live with it. I'm really not handy. I mean, everything works really pretty good. I have some incredible itching on the scar tissue in the back of my arms. My fingers, my hand won't close up all the way, and so, small parts will fall out. Or if I'm trying to pull on a rope, I can't really squeeze a rope real good. But those are all super minor things that, I can live without any problems. So one of the things I learned from this is the power of prayer. I regularly hear people tell me, I was praying for you, Jeff. I don't know how many hundreds to thousands of people were praying. I know there was churches on the East Coast that were praying for me. There's so many times through this thing I should have died. There's answers of prayers over and over and over. When I went to find Toby, I didn't realize it, but my phone had fallen off down there in the fire. It was still down there in the pit. If Toby wouldn't have been there that night, how would I have gotten help? I don't know. But the Lord looks after us over and over and over. I wouldn't wish this experience on anybody, but I'm glad that I got the privilege of going through it. It's helped me see some things about God. I have a strong belief now that my life is not my life to live. It's His. No matter what He wants me to do, it's His. I have no idea where God will take me from this point on. Like I said, it's probably good that I don't know. I have a bad habit of taking the shortcuts and trying to end up at the final destination. So I'm glad He doesn't reveal that to me, but I know He is there to lead. I want to share a special picture with you. This is a picture that I took a couple of years ago. This is actually, my parents bought some property back at about 85 there below the school, about 5 miles below the school. And grew up there, obviously. And there was at the back of the property, when I took this picture, it was actually right at the edge of my parents' property. And you can see that this is a valley going up the creek there. And this is a place that I've gone hundreds of times on Sabbath afternoon walks. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful area. And the last time I was up there, the ferns had grown over the trail. You had a difficult time finding it. And then a few years later, we had, this was just before my accident that I took this picture, I believe. It might have been right after. It was really close to my accident. But anyways, we had a forest fire go through the area, and it burned everything. As you can see, if you look real carefully, the white is the actually ash. When I took this picture, it was a couple of weeks after the fire. They'd got the fire out. There was still hot spots, still smoking stumps and that kind of thing. But you can see how hot it burned. The black clusters on the sides are actually ferns that were completely burned up. But you'll notice down the middle there is the trail that I went on over and over and over as a kid. If you look at the trail real carefully, you'll see the ferns aren't even burned on it. They're dead from the heat, but they're not burned. This is something that was really, really special to me, because through the different things of my accident, there was many times that I would say, I don't want to go through this. I remember being wheeled down the hall in the gurney, going to my first skin graft surgery. And I'm thinking, man, I don't want to do this, Lord. But you don't have any choice. You got to do it. It's going to happen. And I remember praying and said, Lord, take my hand. Walk beside me as we go through this. This picture reminds me of those times of sometimes we all go through fires. And if we stop and we ask the Lord to walk with us, take our hand, go through the fire with us, and if we stop and we turn around and look back, we can see the trail very clearly that God has taken us on. This picture hangs above my desk at Milo. It reminds me, got to rely on God at all times, no matter what. Ask for his help. Ask for him to lead us through the fires that we have. Every one of you guys will have fires that you have to walk through. Remember, take his hand through that fire. Let him walk with us. Invite him to do that. At Milo, we have some challenges ahead of us. In fact, from a human point of view, they're huge challenges. But I know that with God walking beside us, we will walk through it and come out okay. I love the quote, we have nothing to fear for the future except that we forget how he has led us in the past. We've got to remember that.